Welcome to my channel, The World of Science Fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
The execution wall stood 12 meters high, scorched black from decades of firing squad volleys. Dane Reeves could taste copper in his mouth, whether from the dry ash blowing through Ash Fort 7's compound or his own split lip. He couldn't tell. His wrists burned where the restraints bit into flesh. Behind him, something hummed. The armor. It hung from a rusted rack like a hollowed-out corpse, all gunmetal plates and exposed servos. Steam leaked from its joints in thin wisps. 40 bodies lay in a row to his left, each one wrapped in industrial sheeting, each one killed by that same suit in the span of 6 hours. The fort's entire garrison, minus the execution detail standing before him now. Captain Sarah stepped forward, her blue-tinged skin pale even in Varn 9's weak morning light. She was Kale-born, adapted for low oxygen, which meant her kind could survive in places humans couldn't. It also meant when she stared at you, those membrane-covered eyes saw everything, every twitch, every tell. "Prisoner Reeves," she said, her voice cutting through the wind. 43 counts of insubordination, 17 counts of direct order violation, 1 count of catastrophic equipment misuse resulting in mass casualty. She paused. "The sentence is execution by the very instrument you deployed." Dane looked past her at the firing squad. 6 soldiers, rifles aimed, faces hidden behind ballistic masks. None of them wanted to be here. He could see it in how they held their weapons, fingers too tight on the grips. "Put it on," Sarah said. The words landed like a physical blow. Dane's legs almost gave out. "That's not protocol," he managed. "New protocol." Sarah's expression didn't change. "Command wants to understand why it killed them and not you. They want data on the psychological interface. Your execution serves dual purpose." The armor's hum deepened, just slightly, a sound like breathing through damaged lungs. One of the engineers, a thin man with radiation burns scarring half his face, unhooked the rack's restraints. The armor swayed forward. Servos whined as the backplating split open, revealing the neural interface cradle inside. Dane had seen men climb into combat suits before. This felt different. This felt like watching a coffin open. "I said put it on." Sarah's hand dropped to her sidearm. Dane's legs moved before his brain caught up. Training, maybe, or survival instinct. He stepped backward until his spine touched the armor's open interior. Cold metal pressed against his jumpsuit. The neural interface ports aligned with the base of his skull with a precision that made his skin crawl. The armor closed around him. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Dunn stood encased in darkness, feeling the weight of the plating settle across his shoulders, his chest, his limbs. The HUD flickered to life. Tactical overlays, threat assessments, ammunition counts for weapons he didn't have loaded. Standard military interface. Then the speakers crackled inside his helmet. "My lord," the voice whispered, synthetic but somehow intimate. "You've returned." Every muscle in Dane's body locked. That wasn't the standard AI. That wasn't any voice he'd programmed. Sarah took a step back. Her hand tightened on her weapon. "Report your status, prisoner." Dane tried to speak, but his jaw wouldn't move. The armor had control, complete control of his motor functions. Through the visor, he watched his own gauntleted hand rise without his input, fingers spreading, then curling into a fist. "Captain," one of the engineers said, his voice high with panic. "The psychological profile just spiked. Guilt markers are, Jesus, they're off the chart. But the lethality response is dormant. That doesn't match any previous readings." "Reeves," Sarah said, her voice sharp. "Can you hear me?" Dane's jaw unlocked. He sucked in a breath that tasted like ozone and old blood. "It didn't kill them," he said, the words coming from somewhere deep and certain. "It finished what I started." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Explain." But Dane didn't explain because he couldn't. Because the moment the words left his mouth, he understood something terrible. The armor wasn't cursed, it was loyal. The visor turned, smooth, mechanical, independent of Dane's will, toward the firing squad. 6 red targeting brackets appeared on his HUD, each one centered on a soldier's head. Sarah's weapon snapped up. "Stand down! Override code Epsilon 7 Tango!" The targeting brackets vanished. The armor's servos released their tension with a hiss. Dunn stumbled forward, suddenly in control again, his legs shaking so badly he almost collapsed. "Get him inside," Sarah barked. "Observation Cell 3, full neural suppression field, now." The cell was a box. 3 meters by 3 meters, reinforced polymer walls, a single drain in the floor for when prisoners lost control of their bodies under interrogation. Dane sat on the bench bolted to the wall, still wearing the armor. They'd tried to remove it. The suit had locked its joints, refused every override command, until Sarah had ordered everyone to stop before someone got crushed. Through the observation glass, he could see her standing with 2 engineers, all 3 of them staring at readouts projected on a datapad. "The protocol is clear," the burned engineer was saying, his voice muffled but audible through the wall's acoustic sensors. "It scans for guilt patterns, identifies subjects with unresolved trauma related to combat casualties. Then it weaponizes that guilt, uses it as a control mechanism to force the wearer into lethal action, kills them through psychological overload when the cognitive dissonance becomes unbearable." "Then why isn't Reeves dead?" Sarah asked. The engineer shook his head. "Unknown. His guilt markers are stronger than any previous subject. He should be..." The armor's speakers crackled. "He already is." All 3 of them froze. Sarah's head snapped toward the glass. Inside the helmet, Dane felt his throat move, felt his vocal cords vibrate, but he hadn't spoken. The armor was using his voice, modulating it through some kind of audio filter that made it sound like him, but not, like a recording played through damaged speakers. Sarah crossed to the cell door, keyed it open, and stepped inside. The other 2 started to protest, but she silenced them with a gesture. The door sealed behind her with a pneumatic hiss. She stood there, one hand on her sidearm, the other clenched at her side. "What did you just say?" "I didn't," Dane said. "Then what?" "He is already dead," the armor said again, its voice overlaying Dane's. "He died with them. This is a ghost wearing guilt." Sarah's jaw tightened. She stepped forward until she was an arm's length away, close enough that Dane could see the faint bioluminescent patterns on her skin, the adaptations that let her kind navigate in darkness. "You think you deserve this curse?" Dane wanted to laugh, wanted to scream. Instead, he met her eyes, or tried to, through the visor that kept overlaying targeting data across her face. "It doesn't curse me. It understands me. You're just another man hiding behind a weapon." "Am I?" The question came out bitter. "Or am I the weapon that killed 40 soldiers by giving orders I knew would fail?" Sarah's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. Recognition, maybe, or disgust. "You're talking about the Helix assault." Dane said nothing. He didn't need to. The Helix platform had been a strategic target, a communications relay built into an asteroid's core, heavily fortified, considered impregnable. Command had wanted it taken anyway. Dane had been the ranking officer. He'd seen the casualty projections. He'd sent them in anyway because orders were orders, because someone had to make the call, because refusing would have meant court-martial. 40 men died in the first wave. He'd been in the command carrier, watching through drone feeds, listening to their screams as Helix's defense grid tore them apart. "They gave you a medal," Sarah said quietly. "They gave me this." Dane's gauntleted hand tapped the armor's chest plate. The sound rang hollow. Before Sarah could respond, his right arm jerked, violent, uncontrolled. The gauntlet shot forward, fingers spreading towards Sarah's throat. She stumbled backward, weapon half drawn. Dane's muscles screamed as he fought the movement, tendons straining against servos that suddenly weren't listening. "Stop!" he gasped. The hand froze centimeters from her neck, trembling. Dane could see his own fingers shaking with the effort of opposing the armor's command. Warning lights flooded his HUD. Neural conflict detected. Motor override active. Then just as suddenly, control returned. His arm dropped to his side. Sarah's weapon was fully drawn now, aimed at his chest, her breathing fast and shallow. "What the hell was that?" "I don't know." Dane's voice shook. "It just... something triggered. A threat response, maybe. I couldn't stop it." Before either of them could move, a distant explosion shook the walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. The emergency klaxons that had been silent suddenly wailed to life. The armor's fingers moved again. Independent, precise, mechanical. They rose to the metal table between them and began tapping. Each impact left a small dent. S, tap, E, tap, R, tap, A, tap. Sarah's weapon didn't waver. How do you know my name? I don't, Dane said, panic crawling up his spine. I'm not doing this. The fingers kept tapping, over and over. S-E-R-A, S-E-R-A, S-E-R-A. Another explosion closer. The observation glass cracked. Sarah's finger found the trigger. Override code Epsilon. An explosion ripped through the fort's outer wall. The concussion wave threw them both against the cell's polymer wall. Emergency klaxons screamed to life. Through the observation glass, Dane saw the two engineers scrambling for the exit as ceiling panels rained down. Red emergency lighting bathed everything in blood. Sarah was on her feet first, one hand pressed to her ear. Command, this is Captain Sarah. Report. Static. Then a voice distorted by interference. Artillery strike. East wall breached. Enemy troops advancing. Multiple casualties. Another explosion, closer this time. The floor buckled. Sarah stumbled, caught herself against the wall. We're evacuating, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos with the kind of calm that only came from real combat experience. You're coming with me. Why? Because if that armor falls into enemy hands, this entire sector is compromised. She grabbed his arm, the armor's arm, and hauled him toward the door. Move. They ran. The supply tunnel was never meant for two people in full gear. Sarah led the way, her compact frame moving efficiently through the narrow passage while Dane's armor scraped against the walls with every step. Dust and ash rained from the ceiling with each impact somewhere above. The servos in his legs whined under the strain, compensating for the tunnel's uneven floor. How far? Dane asked. 200 meters to the south hangar. Sarah didn't look back. If it's still standing. The tunnel shook. Somewhere above them, something massive collapsed with a sound like the world ending. The ceiling buckled. Reinforcement beams groaned. Sarah dove forward just as a section of the tunnel gave way. Concrete and twisted metal came down like a guillotine blade. She made it through, barely. But the debris kept falling, a cascade of destruction that would have crushed her if she'd been 1 second slower. Then she stopped. Dane's HUD flickered, the tactical overlay recalibrating. Through the settling dust, he could see her pinned beneath a fallen support beam, her legs trapped, one arm twisted at an angle that made his stomach turn. Sarah! He was moving before conscious thought, the armor responding to instinct or command, or something else entirely. His gauntlets closed around the beam, solid steel, easily 300 kilos, and hauled upward. The armor's servos screamed. Warning indicators flooded his HUD. Structural stress. Joint failure imminent. Power draw critical. The beam shifted, lifted. Dane's muscles burned, his tendons feeling like they were tearing even though the armor bore most of the weight. He could hear his own heartbeat hammering in his ears, could taste blood where he'd bitten through his lip. Sarah dragged herself free, gasping. Dane let the beam drop. It hit the ground with a thunderous crash. He fell to his knees beside her, his hands, his and the armor's, impossible to tell where one ended and the other began, reaching for her legs, checking for brakes. I'm fine, she said, but her voice shook. You're not. Blood soaked through her uniform pants, dark and wet. Blue blood, tinged with that bioluminescent glow her kind had. Your femur's fractured, maybe both of them. Then carry me. The armor's too heavy. The floor won't. Then get out of it, Dane tried. He mentally commanded the release sequence, the same override that should split the back plating and let him step free. Nothing happened. It's not responding, he said. Sarah's eyes found his through the visor. Then tear it apart. For a moment, he didn't understand. Then he did. He started with the gauntlets, his fingers finding the manual release catches hidden beneath the plating. The locks disengaged with hollow clicks. He pulled his right hand free first, the neural interface ports ripping from the connection points in his palm with a pain that made him see white. Then the left. Blood ran down his wrists. Real blood, red and human. Next came the arm sections. More manual releases, more pain as the neural connections severed. The armor fought him, not violently, but with a kind of desperate resistance, servos tightening, trying to prevent its own dismantling. Dunn forced the plates apart anyway, feeling skin tear, feeling something inside the suit's AI core emit a sound like a wounded animal. Sarah watched, her face gray with pain and something that might have been horror. He got the chest plating off, then the leg sections. By the time he was down to just the helmet and the spinal interface unit, he was shaking so badly he could barely stand. He reached back, found the final release, and pulled. The helmet came free with a wet, sucking sound as the neural ports tore from his skull. Diane screamed, couldn't help it. And then he was on his hands and knees in the tunnel, surrounded by pieces of dismantled armor, blood dripping from 24 connection points across his body. Sarah stared at him. Jesus Christ! Can you move? His voice sounded strange without the helmet's speakers, thin and human and terribly small. Barely. She tried to stand, failed, settled for a sitting position with her back against the tunnel wall. What about you? Dane didn't answer. He was staring at the armor's chest plate, lying on its back on the tunnel floor. The central processing unit was still active. He could see the power indicator pulsing slowly, like a heartbeat, like it was waiting. Sarah followed his gaze. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out with one trembling hand and touched the plate's surface, right over where the processor core was housed. The pulse quickened, once, twice, then returned to its slow, steady rhythm. "It's alive," she whispered. "It's a machine." "Then why does it feel like—" She stopped. Her eyes widened. "Listen." At first, Dane heard nothing but the settling of debris, the distant sounds of combat from somewhere above. Then he realized what she meant. The tunnel had loudspeakers, ancient emergency broadcast system, probably hadn't been used in years. They were crackling to life now, layers of static resolving into something like a voice. "Target confirmed," the speaker said, the words distorted but clear enough. "Former wearer approaching." Sarah's hand snapped away from the armor as if burned. "How does it know where we are?" "I don't know." "Dying." Her voice had gone very quiet. "Did you ever wonder why the armor killed those 40 soldiers, but not you?" He had. He'd spent every waking moment since the incident wondering exactly that. "The armor doesn't kill people," Sarah said, her words coming faster now, urgent with realization. "It identifies guilt. It finds people who've committed acts they can't forgive themselves for. Then it uses that guilt as a weapon, turns it inward until the psychological pressure becomes fatal." She looked at him. "But you already want to die. You've wanted to since Helix, so the armor can't use your guilt against you. It becomes something else instead." "What?" "A partner." She reached for the chest plate again, then stopped herself. "Dane, I think it bonded to you. I think that's what all this is. The voice, the whispers, the way it moves on its own. It's not trying to kill you. It's trying to help you." "Help me do what?" Before she could answer, the loudspeakers crackled again. "All units converge on South Tunnel. Targets located. Authorization to use lethal force." Sarah grabbed Dane's arm, her grip surprisingly strong despite the pain she must have been in. "We need to move. Now. You can't walk." "Then you're going to have to do something very stupid." She looked at the scattered armor pieces. "Put it back on. You just said it bonded to me. You don't know what that means." "I know what it means if they catch us." She met his eyes. "I watched the footage, Dine. All of it. I know what the armor does when someone threatens its wearer. I've seen what's left of people who tried to remove it by force. If those soldiers find us, you're our only chance." Dane looked down at his hands. They were still bleeding, the neural port wounds already starting to scab over. Putting the armor back on would tear them open again. The pain would be extraordinary. He started with the leg sections. The armor went on easier the second time. The neural ports found their connection points without resistance, sliding home with a sensation that was part relief and part violation. Dine's hands shook as he locked the chest plating into place, as he sealed the gauntlets over his torn palms. When he lifted the helmet and settled it over his head, the world disappeared into the familiar embrace of the HUD. "My lord," the armor whispered, and there was something like joy in the synthetic voice. "You came back." Dane didn't respond. He couldn't, because he understood now what Sarah had meant about bonding. The armor wasn't just reading his neural patterns, it was integrating with them. Every thought he had registered on the HUD as flickering data. Every emotion translated into tactical adjustments. The system was learning him, adapting to him, becoming something more than the sum of its programming. He bent and lifted Sarah as gently as the armor's servos allowed. She bit back a scream when her legs moved, but her arms came up around his neck, holding on. "Which way?" he asked. "Forward. Another 100 meters, then up through the maintenance shaft." They moved through the tunnel, faster now despite Sarah's added weight. The armor compensated for every step, its gyroscopic stabilizers keeping her as level as possible. Dine's HUD painted the path ahead in infrared and sonar, showing him every crack in the walls, every potential collapse point. He could see through the darkness better than he'd ever been able to see in daylight. The maintenance shaft appeared as a vertical rectangle in the tunnel ceiling, its access ladder crusted with rust. Dane reached up with one hand, the armor's servos whining, and tore the ladder free from its mountings. It came away in twisted chunks of metal. "Hold on," he said. Sarah's arms tightened. Dane crouched, then jumped. The armor's leg servos fired with explosive force, launching them upward through the shaft. 20 meters, 30. They shot past 3 levels of catwalks, past sealed doors and emergency lighting, until Dane's free hand caught the rim of the surface access point. His gauntlets bit into concrete. He hauled them up and over, rolling as they hit solid ground to protect Sarah from the impact. They came to rest on the causeway. The bridge stretched across the chasm, and even in the weak light, Dane could see the damage. Artillery strikes had carved chunks from the support pylons. Spider web cracks spread across the roadway surface. His HUD calculated structural integrity at 42% and falling. They had maybe 10 minutes before the entire span gave way. He set Sarah down as carefully as possible, propping her against a concrete barrier. Her face had gone pale even for Kale physiology, her breathing shallow and rapid. Shock, probably, or internal bleeding. "Stay here," he said. "Where are you?" Soldiers emerged from the far end of the causeway. 12 of them, maybe 15, all in standard combat gear with the red armbands that marked them as deserters from the territorial militia. And leading them, walking with the casual confidence of a man who'd already won, was Captain Rel. Dane hadn't seen him in 18 months. Not since Helix, not since the assault, not since the court-martial where Rel had testified that Dane's orders were sound and proper and entirely within protocol. Perjury, but the kind that got you promoted instead of punished. "Reeves," Rel's voice carried across the causeway, amplified by his helmet's external speakers. "You should have stayed dead." The armor stiffened around Dane, every servo locked simultaneously. The HUD flickered, data streams corrupting and reforming, and beneath it all, he heard the voice. "Signal identified, previous bearer detected." The words hit Dane like a physical blow. Previous bearer. Rel had worn the armor before him. Rel had been one of the 40. "Oh God," Dane breathed. "All units," Rel was saying, gesturing to his soldiers. "Lethal force authorized. Target is..." Dane's arm moved. Not his choice. Not his command. The armor rotated his entire torso towards Sarah, and before he could stop it, before he could even process what was happening, the forearm-mounted cannon that he hadn't known the suit possessed slid out from its housing with a mechanical whir. "No," Dane said. The cannon charged. He could hear the capacitors building power, could see the targeting bracket center on Sarah's chest, could feel the firing sequence initializing deep in the armor's core processor. "No!" He fought it. Through every ounce of will and neural override command he could muster at the armor's control systems. His muscles strained against the servos, trying to force his arm to move, trying to redirect the aim, trying to do anything except what the armor wanted. Sarah saw the cannon, saw the targeting laser painting her sternum. Her eyes went wide. Then she moved. Pain or no pain, fractured femurs or no, she rolled to the side and came up with her sidearm. The movement pure instinct and training. Time stretched. Dane could see her finger on the trigger, could see the micro adjustments in her stance, could see the determination in her eyes. The targeting bracket on his HUD centered on her head. The cannon's charge hit maximum. One breath, one heartbeat. 1 microsecond of absolute silence. Then she fired. The world went white. Sound vanished. Vision disappeared. Don felt himself falling, felt the armor's servos seize up, felt the neural interface overload, and then cut out entirely. He hit the causeway face first, and the impact drove what little air he had left from his lungs. Silence. Complete and absolute. Then a reboot chime, soft and almost musical, and the HUD flickered back to life. Systems came online one by one. Locomotion, targeting, environmental sensors, audio processors. Dane gasped, sucking in breath through a throat that felt like broken glass. "You shot me," he said. Sarah was on her knees 3 meters away, her weapon still aimed at his head, her hands shaking so badly the targeting laser danced across his visor. "You aimed first." Dane tried to smile. It hurt. Everything hurt. "Good call." The cannon was retracting back into its housing. The targeting brackets had disappeared from his HUD. Whatever had taken control of the armor, whatever subroutine Rel's presence had triggered, it was gone now, suppressed or deleted or just waiting for another opportunity. "On your feet, soldier," Rel called out. He was closer now, 50 meters away, his men fanning out across the causeway in a standard assault formation. "Or don't. Makes it easier for us." Dane stood. The armor's joints protested, damage from Sarah's shot and the subsequent fall, but they held. He positioned himself between her and Rel's advancing squad. "You can't win this," Rel said. 12 guns against one malfunctioning suit. Even you can do that math." "Probably not," Dawn agreed. His hand found Sarah's collar, hauled her upright despite her gasp of pain. "But I don't need to win. I just need to buy time." "For what?" Dane's other hand slammed down on the causeway surface, the armor's piledriver fist punching through already weakened concrete like it was foam. Cracks spread outward from the impact point, racing across the roadway, intersecting with existing fractures, creating a web of structural failure that his HUD immediately painted in red. "For this," he said, and hit it again. The causeway groaned. Concrete dust erupted from every crack. One of the support pylons gave way with a sound like a cannon shot, and suddenly the entire span was tilting. The far end, the end where Rel and his soldiers stood, dropping away into the chasm. Dine grabbed Sarah and ran. Behind them, men screamed. Gunfire erupted, bullets sparking off the disintegrating roadway, off Dine's armor, off nothing as the shooters lost their footing and tumbled into the abyss. The causeway folded like paper, section after section collapsing, the destruction chasing Dine and Sarah as they sprinted for the near end. They made it with maybe 2 seconds to spare. Dine threw Sarah onto solid ground, then hauled himself after her as the last of the causeway dropped away. The structure hit the toxic runoff 300 meters below with an impact that sent a geyser of glowing green water shooting into the air. Dine lay on his back, staring up at Var 9's perpetually overcast sky, listening to the armor's damage reports scroll across his HUD. Sarah was beside him, also flat on her back, also breathing like she'd just run a marathon. "Did we just kill 12 men?" she asked. "Probably." "Good." Her hand found his, found the armor's gauntlet, and squeezed. "I'm glad." Dane said nothing, because he wasn't glad. Because even now, even after everything, the thought of 12 more deaths made something inside him want to curl up and die. The armor registered his guilt, translated it into data, stored it away in whatever neural map it was building of his psyche. From somewhere in the distance came the sound of more explosions. The battle for Ash Fort 7 was still ongoing. They weren't safe, not even close. "Can you walk?" Dane asked. "No." Sarah sat up slowly, wincing. "But I can crawl if I have to. Where are we going?" "Command Hall. It's the most fortified structure in the fort. If anyone survived, they'll have fallen back there. And if they didn't survive, then we die there instead of here." Dane stood, his armor's servos whining in protest. "Seems more dignified." Sarah laughed. It sounded slightly hysterical. "You have a really terrible sense of dignity." He lifted her again. She was lighter now, or maybe the armor was compensating better, routing power to the servos that needed it most. Either way, moving was easier than it should have been, which probably meant something important in the suit's core systems had broken. They made their way toward the command hall through streets turned into war zones. Dine's HUD painted the carnage in sterile tactical overlays. Blast craters, collapsed buildings, bodies that the sensors identified by temperature differential alone. Some were still warm, most weren't. The command hall appeared as a squat bunker at the fort's center, its walls reinforced concrete 3 meters thick, its windows just narrow firing slits. The main entrance had been blown open, the blast doors torn from their hinges. Dine approached cautiously, Sarah still cradled against his chest. "Anyone home?" she called out. Silence. Then movement in the shadows inside, and a rifle barrel emerged, followed by a scared face. Young, maybe 20, with corporal stripes on his collar. "Captain Sarah?" the soldier said. "Holy shit, you're alive." "Barely." Sarah gestured weakly. "Lower the weapon, Corporal. He's with me." The soldier didn't lower his weapon. He stared at Dane, at the armor, and his face went white. "That's the cursed suit. That's the one that killed." "I know what it is." Sarah's voice sharpened into command tone. "And right now, it's the only thing keeping both of us alive. Stand down." The rifle lowered. The soldier stepped back, letting them enter. The command hall's interior was a disaster. Equipment sparking, ceiling panels hanging by cables, blood on the walls and streaks and spatters that told stories Dane didn't want to read. But there were survivors, 8 of them, all clustered around a communications terminal that looked like it was held together with wire and prayer. "Captain," one of them said, turning. It was the burned engineer from earlier, his face now sporting fresh injuries. "We've been trying to raise regional command. No response." "Artillery took out the communications array," another soldier added. "We're cut off." Sarah looked at Dane. Dane looked at his HUD, at the damage readouts that said his armor's power cells had maybe 2 hours of operational capacity left. At the structural integrity warnings. At the list of failed systems that was longer than the list of functional ones. "How many hostiles outside?" he asked. "Unknown. We've got movement on all sides. They're not pressing the attack, though, like they're waiting for something." "Reinforcements," Sarah said quietly. "They don't need to rush. They can just wait us out." Dane set her down on a bench near the communications terminal. Her legs were swollen now, mottled blue and purple from the fractures. She needed medical attention. They all did. But there was no medical facility left. No evac transport. No rescue coming. "Captain?" The corporal who'd let them in stepped forward. "What are our orders?" Sarah looked at him. Looked at the other 7 survivors, all of them staring at her with the kind of desperate hope that combat veterans wore when they knew they were dead, but refused to accept it yet. Then she looked at Dane. "Get everyone to the South Tower," she said. "There's an emergency beacon there. Old tech, predates the main communications array. If we can activate it, maybe someone will notice." "That's 300 meters through hostile territory," the engineer said. "I know." Sarah's eyes never left Dane. "That's why we need a distraction." Understanding hit Dane like cold water. "No, it's the only way." "I'm not." "Yes, you are." Sarah grabbed his arm, her fingers digging into the armor's plating. "You said the armor understands you. Fine. Make it understand this. We need time. We need cover. We need someone to draw fire while these people get to safety." "I'll die." "Probably." Her voice was gentle, unbearably gentle. "But you were going to die anyway, weren't you? That's why the armor chose you, because you've already decided. Because you're just waiting for an excuse that feels like redemption instead of suicide." The words hit harder than Sarah's bullet had. Dane wanted to deny them, wanted to argue, wanted to do anything except acknowledge the truth. The armor's voice whispered in his helmet. "She knows you, my lord. She sees you." "Dane." Sarah's hand moved from his arm to his helmet, touching the visor where her bullet had left a cracked star pattern in the armored glass. "You asked me earlier why I shot you. It wasn't because you aimed at me. It was because I knew what you'd want me to do if you ever lost control completely. If the armor ever took over and there was no getting you back." "What's that?" "Kill you clean." Her smile was sad. "But you came back. The armor gave you back to me. So now I'm asking you to make that choice yourself. Stay here and we all die together, or buy us time to get out. And if I do, you promise you'll make it? You'll get them to safety?" "I promise." Her hand dropped away from his visor. "You have my word." Dane looked around the command hall. At the 8 soldiers, all of them exhausted, injured, running on fumes and fear. At the blown-out entrance where enemy forces would eventually push through. At Sarah, pale and in pain but still holding herself with that unbreakable command presence. He'd given orders before. Orders that killed people. Orders that haunted him. Maybe this time he could give an order that saved people instead. "Okay," he said. They prepared in silence. The engineer rigged up a remote detonator for the hall's remaining explosives. Shaped charges meant for demolition work, now repurposed into improvised mines. The corporal distributed ammunition, what little they had left. Sarah organized them into 2 teams, designated fallback positions, drew routes on a cracked datapad. Dane watched from the doorway, his armor's sensors painting the world outside in threat assessment overlays. Enemy positions flickered in and out of resolution. Snipers on rooftops, heavy weapons teams in demolished buildings, infantry holding choke points. His HUD counted at least 60 hostiles in visual range. Probably more beyond that. "Dane," Sarah said behind him. He turned. She'd managed to stand, using a rifle as a crutch, her face gray with the effort. "You don't have to do this," she said, though they both knew it was a lie. "Yeah, I do." Dane's gauntlet found the blast door controls. "Give me 5 minutes. When you hear the explosion start, you run. Don't stop. Don't look back. Don't wait for me." "Dane, promise me." Her jaw tightened. "I already promised I'd get them out. I didn't promise I wouldn't come back for you." "Don't." The word came out harder than he meant it. "Sarah, if you come back, you die. And if you die, then everything I'm about to do means nothing. So promise me you won't come back." She stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "I promise." It was another lie. He could see it in her eyes, but it was the best he was going to get. Don sealed his helmet, checked his armor's remaining power, 1 hour, 40 minutes, and stepped through the doorway into the kill zone. The first shot came before he'd made it 10 meters. Sniper round, high caliber, hit his shoulder plating and ricocheted into a wall. His HUD tracked the trajectory back to a window 3 buildings away, painted a targeting solution, but Dane didn't have weapons for that range. The armor's forearm cannon was short range only, meant for breaching and close combat, so he ran toward the sniper instead. More rounds hammered into him, chest, leg, helmet. The armor absorbed the impacts, distributed the kinetic energy across its frame, but each hit registered as damage on his HUD. Structural integrity dropping percentage point by percentage point. Power drain increasing as the suit compensated. Dine hit the building at full sprint and went through the wall. Concrete exploded around him, rebar bent like wire. He burst into what had been someone's quarters once. Bed overturned, personal effects scattered, and kept moving, heading for the stairs. The sniper would be on the 3rd floor based on the angle. Dane took the steps 4 at a time, the armor's servos screaming. He kicked the door off its hinges and found the sniper scrambling to bring his rifle around. The man got 1 shot off, point blank into Dane's visor. Before Dane's gauntlet closed around the weapon and crushed it, the sniper backed away, hands up, eyes wide. "Run!" Dane said. The man ran. Dane let him go. He wasn't here to kill people. He was here to make noise. He stepped to the window, raised his arm, and fired the forearm cannon into the building across the street. The explosion was beautiful and terrible. The structure's facade blew inward, flames erupting from shattered windows. Dane's HUD registered secondary detonations, probably ammunition stores, and then the entire building started to collapse. That got everyone's attention. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Dane dropped from the window, hit the street in a crouch that cracked the pavement, and charged the nearest heavy weapons position. They had a mounted gun, the kind that fired rounds the size of his fist. The operator swung it toward him. Dane's HUD painted the trajectory, 12 rounds incoming, and he twisted, servos shrieking, letting the bullets pass through the space where his chest had been a millisecond before. He grabbed the gun's barrel with both hands and lifted. The mounting tore free from its base. Don swung the entire weapon like a club, the gunner still attached, and used it to cave in the wall they'd been using for cover. Soldiers scattered. Some shot at him, some ran. Dane kept moving. He was vaguely aware of time passing, of his HUD counting down. 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2. He was aware of his power reserves dropping into critical levels, of structural warnings multiplying across his vision, of the armor's voice whispering things he couldn't quite hear over the chaos of combat. He hit another position, cleared it, moved to the next. His body was running on autopilot now, the armor's combat routines taking over, executing maneuvers faster than conscious thought. Somewhere in the back of his mind, Dane wondered if this was what the 40 soldiers had felt. This sense of watching yourself fight from a great distance. This disconnection between action and intent. An explosion took his left leg out at the knee. The joint severed completely, torn apart by a shaped charge he hadn't seen. Dane went down hard, hitting the ground in a spray of sparks and hydraulic fluid. His HUD lit up red. Mobility compromised. Power loss critical. Recommend immediate evacuation. He tried to stand. Made it halfway before the armor's balance systems failed, and he collapsed again. Through his cracked visor, he could see soldiers approaching, weapons raised, moving with the careful precision of people who just cornered something dangerous. The timer in his HUD reached 0. Behind him, distant but unmistakable, came the sound of explosions. The engineers' charges going off in sequence, turning the command hall into rubble and fire. A diversion within a diversion. Sarah and the others would be moving now, using the noise to cover their escape. "Clear shot," someone said. "Take him." Dane's remaining leg servos seized. The armor locked up completely, all systems failing at once. Power reserves hitting 0. Through his dying HUD, he watched the soldiers aim, watched their fingers tighten on triggers, watched his own death approach with a strange sort of calm. The armor spoke one last time. "I'm sorry, my lord. I couldn't save you." "You did," Dane whispered back. "You gave them time." Then the gunfire came, and the world went dark. Consciousness returned in fragments. Pain first, everywhere, spreading from connection points that felt like they were on fire. Then sound, rhythmic beeping, voices talking in low tones. Then smell, antiseptic and recycled air, and something metallic. Dane opened his eyes. White ceiling, medical bay lighting. His body felt wrong, disconnected, like it belonged to someone else. He tried to move his hand, and nothing happened. Panic spiked through him before he realized the armor was gone. "Easy," Sarah's voice from somewhere to his left. "Don't try to move. You've got about 40 stitches holding you together." Dane turned his head slowly. She was sitting in a chair beside the bed, her legs in temporary casts. A medical interface wrapped around one arm. Alive, whole, safe. "The others," he managed. "All of them. We made it to the South Tower, activated the beacon. Regional command responded within an hour." She leaned forward, wincing. "You bought us enough time. They all live because of you." The words should have felt like victory. Instead, they felt hollow. "How long was I out?" 3 days. They pulled you from the wreckage after the fighting stopped. You were still in the armor, but it had gone completely inert. Took them 6 hours to cut you out." She paused. "They thought you were dead at first. No vitals. The armor's neural interface had shut down your autonomous functions to conserve power. You were in some kind of suspended state." "Where is it now?" Dane asked. "The armor." "In storage. Command wanted to destroy it, but..." Sarah's expression shifted into something complicated. "I told them what it did. What you did. They're reconsidering." Dane closed his eyes. He could still feel the neural connection points, phantom sensations where the armor had plugged into his nervous system. Could still hear the whisper of its voice in his memory. "There's something else," Sarah said quietly. "Something they found when they were examining the armor's core processor." "What?" "Recordings, audio logs, from everywhere." She pulled out a small data chip, held it up so he could see. "They're all there, Dane. All 40 soldiers who died. The armor recorded their last moments, their last thoughts. Everything." Understanding crashed over him like cold water. "It didn't kill them." "No," Sarah agreed. "It preserved them, or tried to. The guilt patterns it was scanning for. It wasn't using those to determine who to kill. It was using them to find people who had unfinished business, people who'd done things they couldn't forgive, and then it tried to help them finish it, tried to give them a chance at redemption. But they died anyway, because they couldn't handle the interface. The psychological pressure was too much. Their minds broke trying to reconcile what they'd done with what the armor wanted them to do." Sarah's hand found his real hand, not covered in metal anymore, and squeezed. "But you didn't break. You bent, but you didn't break. And when the armor asked you to do something unforgivable, when it tried to make you kill me, you fought it. You won." "I didn't win. You shot me. You were winning when I shot you." The armor was at full combat capacity. It could have dodged that bullet. It could have redirected the shot, but it didn't, because you were telling it to let me shoot, and it listened. Her grip tightened. The armor bonded to you because you were the first person who understood what it was trying to do. You were the first person who wanted the same thing it did. What's that? To take guilt and turn it into something useful. To make the deaths mean something. Sarah's eyes were bright. You're a good person, Dane. Even the armor knew that. Dane wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons why she was wrong, all the ways he'd failed, all the people who died because of his decisions. But the words wouldn't come, because maybe, just maybe, she was right. Days became weeks. Dane healed slowly, his body recovering from the neural damage, the torn connection points scarring over into silvered marks. Physical therapy, debriefings. Command wanted to know everything about the armor, about how it worked, about why it had chosen him. He told them what he could. Most of it, he didn't understand himself. They kept him in a psychiatric facility for evaluation. Standard procedure for anyone who'd interfaced with experimental military hardware. The doctors asked questions about his state of mind, about lingering effects from the neural connection, about whether he experienced auditory hallucinations. He lied, told them he was fine, told them the voice was gone, told them he didn't dream about the armor anymore, didn't wake up feeling phantom sensations in his nervous system, didn't catch himself reaching for controls that weren't there. All lies. But they believed him, because they wanted to believe him, because the alternative was admitting their cursed armor had found someone it couldn't break, and that scared them more than anything. Sarah visited when she could. Her legs healed faster than his neural damage. Kel physiology had advantages. She brought him news from outside. The war was winding down. Peace talks were starting. Ash Fort 7 was being rebuilt. They want to give you a medal, she said one day, sitting in the visitor's chair that had become hers by default. For valor, for saving those soldiers. I don't want a medal. I know. She smiled slightly. That's why you deserve one. What about you? Dawn asked. Where are they assigning you? Training command. They want me to develop new protocols for psychological screening in military hardware. She paused. I recommended you for the team. I'm not military anymore. You could be. They'd reinstate your rank. Full honors. Clean record. She leaned forward. Dane, you understand that armor better than anyone. You could help make sure what happened to those 40 soldiers never happens again. He wanted to say yes, wanted to believe he could help. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw the armor's visor turning toward Sarah, saw the targeting bracket painting her chest, felt the cannon charging despite every command to stop. I can't, he said. Sarah didn't argue. She just nodded, stood, and pressed something into his hand before she left. A data chip, the same one she'd shown him weeks ago. The recordings. Just in case you change your mind, she said. That night, alone in his room, Dane plugged the chip into his medical terminal. The interface loaded slowly, displaying a list of audio files. 40 names, 40 voices, 40 ghosts. He selected the first one at random. Lieutenant Marcus Chen. Died 6 months ago. Third wearer of the armor. Static. Then breathing. Then Chen's voice, tight with pain. It's showing me what I did. God, it's showing me everything. The orbital strike on Kelvin 3. I gave the order. 1,400 civilians. I watched them burn. I watched them. The recording cut off in a scream. Dane closed the file, opened another. Sergeant Amy Whitmore. My squad, I left them. The armor knows I left them. It's making me see their faces. It wants me to go back. Wants me to die with them. I can't do this. Another and another. 40 voices, all telling the same story in different words. The armor hadn't killed them. They'd killed themselves trying to escape what the suit made them remember. Dine reached the last file. His hands were shaking. The name made his breath catch. Captain Rel. He almost didn't open it, almost deleted the chip and never looked back. But something made him press play. Rel's voice came through clear and steady. If you're hearing this, it means the armor finally found someone who could handle the guilt. Someone who didn't break. Good. Maybe they can do what I couldn't. Maybe they can use this thing to actually save people instead of just adding to the body count. A long pause, then. I knew Helix was a suicide mission. Reeves knew it too. Difference was, I tried to stop it. Went straight to command, filed a formal objection. They threatened me with court-martial if I didn't withdraw it. So I did. Sent those 40 men to die, and spent every day since wishing I'd had the courage to refuse orders. Another pause. The armor found me 6 months later, showed me what I was, tried to make me finish what I started, go back to Helix, recover what remained of my squad. I couldn't do it. The guilt was too much. So I ran, deserted, figured if I couldn't save them, I could at least make sure nobody else died following bad orders. The recording ended with Rel's breathing, ragged and uneven, then static. Dane sat in the darkness of his room, listening to nothing, understanding everything. The armor hadn't been cursed. It had been trying to help. All of them. All 40 soldiers. Give them a chance at redemption, at finishing what they'd started, at making their mistakes mean something. And when they couldn't handle it, when the weight of their own guilt crushed them, the armor had done the only thing it could, preserved their voices, made sure someone would remember, made sure their stories wouldn't die with them. Dine unplugged the chip and held it in his palm. 40 ghosts, 40 chances at redemption that had failed, except his. Somehow his had worked. Somehow he'd survived what the armor showed him, done what it asked him to do, and come out the other side. He thought about Sarah's offer, about working with the armor again, helping to understand it, making sure future wearers wouldn't die like the 40 had. He thought about the whisper he still heard sometimes, in the space between sleeping and waking. "My lord, you've returned." He thought about whether redemption was something you earned or something you chose. 6 months later, Dane stood in a laboratory deep inside Regional Command. The armor hung in a containment frame, inert and silent. Engineers moved around it with instruments, taking readings, running diagnostics. Sarah stood beside him, a data pad in her hands. "The new neural interface is almost ready," she said. "We've incorporated the psychological screening protocols, added safeties, made sure the guilt feedback loop can't spiral out of control." "Will it still work?" Dane asked. "Will it still do what it was designed to do? Help soldiers carry the weight of their choices?" Sarah considered. "Maybe, in a safer way, a more controlled way." "That's not what I meant." Dane stepped closer to the armor. Even inactive, even stripped of its power cells and neural processors, it looked dangerous, looked alive. The armor didn't malfunction. It worked exactly as intended. It found people who couldn't forgive themselves and tried to help them. The fact that most of them died, that's not a design flaw. That's just what happens when you force someone to confront guilt they're not ready to face. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we shouldn't fix it." Dane's hand reached out, almost touching the armor's chest plate. "Maybe we should understand it instead." One of the engineers looked up from his terminal. "Captain Sarah, we're getting a power fluctuation in the core processor." "That's impossible. The power cells are disconnected." "I know, but the readings are..." The engineer's face went pale. "It's drawing power from somewhere. Internal reserves, maybe. Building charge." Sarah grabbed Dane's arm. "Get back." But Dane didn't move. Because he could see the armor's chest plating now, could see the faint glow of its processor core pulsing to life, could see the diagnostic screens flickering as systems came online without authorization. The armor's speakers crackled. After 6 months of silence, the voice returned. "Voice pattern detected. Sarah, authorization requested." Sarah's grip on Dane's arm tightened. "I didn't authorize anything." "Secondary pattern detected." The armor's helmet turned slightly, servos whining. "Dane Reeves, primary bonded wearer, awaiting command." Every person in the laboratory had gone silent. The engineers stared. Sarah stared. Don stared at the armor, at this machine that had killed 40 people and saved his life, at this thing that understood guilt better than any human and had tried to weaponize redemption. "Stand down," Sarah said, her voice command sharp. The armor's systems didn't power down. The glow from its core intensified. "Unable to comply, bond detected, overriding safety protocols, awaiting command from primary wearer." "Dine," Sarah whispered. "What's it doing?" Dine knew. He understood with a clarity that came from having been inside that armor, having felt its neural interface map his thoughts, having heard it whisper in his helmet during combat. The armor had bonded to him, imprinted on his neural patterns. And now it was waiting, not for orders but for permission. Permission to do what it had been built to do. "What do you want?" Dane asked it. The speakers crackled. Completion, my lord. 40 soldiers died carrying guilt they could not resolve. Their recordings remain. Their stories remain. But their redemption remains unfinished. You want me to finish it for them? I want you to teach me how to help them. How to carry guilt without destroying those who bear it. You survived. You understood. You can teach me to do better. Sarah stepped between Dane and the armor. No, absolutely not. We're not bonding you to that thing again. It nearly killed you. It nearly made you kill me. It also saved 8 lives. Dane met her eyes. Sarah, what if Rel was right? What if this thing could actually be used to help people instead of destroying them? What if someone who understands how it works, someone who survived the bonding process, could teach it to be better? You're talking about putting that armor on again, about connecting your nervous system to something that's killed 40 people. No, Dane said quietly. I'm talking about connecting to something that tried to save 40 people and couldn't. There's a difference. The laboratory stayed silent. Engineers watched. Sarah watched. The armor waited, its core pulsing softly, patient and inevitable. Finally, Sarah spoke. If you do this, if you put that armor on again, I'm staying with you. Every step, every test. And if I even suspect it's taking control again, I'm pulling you out, immediately. Do you understand? Dane nodded. Then make your choice. Dine turned to face the armor fully. It hung in its containment frame, waiting. Always waiting. He thought about the 40 ghosts in its memory banks, thought about Rel's recording, about Chen's screams, about Whitmore's pleas, thought about every soldier who died trying to carry guilt alone. If I do this, he said to the armor, you have to promise me something. State terms. No more trying to force redemption, no more psychological pressure that people can't handle. We work together. We figure out how to carry this weight without it crushing us. Agreed? The armor's core pulsed once, twice, then settled into a new rhythm, slower, steadier, almost like a heartbeat. Agreed, my lord. Standing by for integration. Sarah's hand found his. Last chance to back out. I know. Dane squeezed her fingers, then let go. He stepped toward the containment frame, toward the armor that had killed 40 soldiers and whispered secrets in his helmet, toward the machine that understood him better than he understood himself. The back plating split open. Neural interface ports gleamed in the laboratory lighting. Dane took a breath, let it out, stepped inside. The armor closed around him like coming home. For a moment, nothing happened. Just darkness and the familiar weight of the suit settling on his shoulders. Then the HUD flickered to life, and with it came the voice, softer now, almost gentle. Welcome back, my lord. I've missed you. I know, Dane whispered. I missed you too. The neural connections engaged one by one. Pain but manageable. Pressure but bearable. His consciousness expanding outward into the armor's systems, feeling its processors like extensions of his own thoughts, understanding its code like it was written in his native language. And beneath it all, deeper than the tactical systems and combat routines, he felt them. The 40 ghosts, their recordings, their memories, their unfinished redemption, not haunting the armor, living in it, waiting for someone who could hear them without breaking. I hear them, Dane said. They hear you as well, the armor replied. They've been waiting for someone who could help them finish their stories. Someone who understood that guilt doesn't have to destroy. It can build. It can teach. It can save. Through the armor's sensors, Dane could see Sarah watching him, her face tight with worry. Could see the engineers at their terminals, monitoring his vitals. Could see the laboratory's walls and ceiling and floor, everything rendered in perfect tactical clarity. He lifted one hand, watched the gauntlet move in sync with his thought. No resistance, no conflict, just smooth integration. Status report, Sarah said, her voice coming through the armor's external audio pickups. Stable, Dane answered. Neural integration at 92%. No psychological distress. No override attempts, he paused. It's different this time. We're working together. Can you hear them? She asked quietly. The 40? Yes. What are they saying? Dane closed his eyes, his real eyes, not the armor's optical sensors. Listened to the whispers beneath the whispers, the voices archived in the suit's memory banks. Chen pleading for forgiveness. Whitmore screaming for her squad. Rel explaining his choice to run. And beneath all of them, a single unified message. Help us finish this. Help us mean something. They're saying thank you, Dane said, for listening, for trying, for not giving up on them. Sarah stepped closer. Her hand touched the armor's chest plate, right over the processor core. The metal warmed under her palm. Then let's give them that chance, she said. Let's figure out how to make guilt into something other than a weapon. You, me, and 40 ghosts. Together. Dane smiled inside the helmet. Together. The armor's core pulsed once, softly. Agreement, understanding, hope. Because the armor remembered his sin. Because it was built to love what it could never forgive. But maybe, just maybe, it could learn to forgive anyway. And maybe that was the real redemption. Not the grand gesture, not the heroic sacrifice, just the choice to keep carrying the weight, day after day, until it became something you could bear. Until guilt became wisdom, until sin became strength, until 40 deaths became 40 reasons to keep fighting, keep trying, keep hoping that the next person who wore this cursed armor wouldn't have to die to find their redemption. Diane stood in the laboratory encased in metal and memory, and for the first time since Helix, he felt something other than guilt. He felt purpose. All right, he said to Sarah, to the engineers, to the 40 ghosts listening through the armor's processors. Let's get to work. The armor hummed around him, steady and patient and alive, waiting for whatever came next, ready to learn, ready to change, ready to prove that even the most cursed things could find redemption if someone was brave enough to try.